You're now overseeing a caretaker government. We can talk about your future down the road in just a moment. There's a big focus on Geert Wilders at the moment. Can you talk to me about that man and help our audience understand who he is, the man that you've known for a long time, and what we should all know about?
Well, I'm not sure that's up to me, because you could interview him, and I think he would love to do that.
I don't see him here.
No, the point is that the economy is doing very well in the Netherlands, but the election was very much focusing on migration. And clearly, he got the upper hand in the election result. Now, we are famous for having to form coalitions. It takes a long time to do that. So that could still take another couple of months. So we have to see how long that takes. In the meantime, I'm there. But I'm absolutely convinced that on the fundamentals, our outlook to the rest of the world, support for Ukraine, membership to the EU, nothing will change.
You don't think these political changes are a threat to the European project?
No, I don't think so. Because for the Netherlands, yes, we want a strong nation state, but we also need, as one of the biggest exporting countries in the world, we need that membership of the internal market, NATO, the UN, because our safety, both in the economic sense, but also in a literal sense now that Ukraine at this moment is being attacked by Russia, is crucial.
Let's get to NATO. ECB President, odd character in her position to be commenting on the former president, but has commented on the former president, Donald Trump, said that Donald Trump was a threat to some European interests, including NATO. I'd like to talk about NATO with you. We all would. It's interesting to me how the Europeans constantly frame this as America not helping us, the former president not helping us. Can you help us all understand how European countries and governments have been helping themselves? What's happened with defence spending in the last 4 years? Have they put NATO in a better place?
And this was exactly Trump's main issue, that we were not spending enough. And he was right. He was right, because America is about 50% of NATO economy. They were at that moment, when he was president, spending about 75% of the NATO budget. And the rest of NATO was only doing 25%. So he was completely right in forcing us to live up to the 2% commitment. So we invested another 5 billion, which brought us to the 20 billion, which is almost 2%. We are still not exactly there, but almost. And many other countries have done the same. So I always thought that he had a genuine argument here. And by the way, for the US to be in NATO is also in their strategic direct interest. If Russia would gain access to this part of the world, it would also be a threat for the US. So NATO is not just a project from history, never repeat the mistakes of the Second World War. It is also about security now, today, also for the US.
And this is why you've told your colleagues when Trump was president that you shouldn't criticize him. He is right when it comes to some of these multilateral, multinational organizations that more should be done. We need to look inside.
No.
But you're potentially going to be working with him again if you get the top job as Secretary General of NATO, which rumor mill has it that it's going to you, and Trump was to come back. How would you handle him? Because people say to me that you were a Trump whisperer of sorts.
No, no. What I always said is we have not voted in the US. I'm a Dutch citizen. I cannot vote in the United States. So we have to dance with whoever is on the dance floor. And in the end, for the whole of NATO territory, it is crucial that you have amicable personal relations with the other people. And in the end, in the US, it is not only the president making all the policies. There's also the very forceful and powerful Senate Foreign Relations Committee. The House is involved. And there is a strong transatlantic tradition in the US. And I always felt again that Trump was right on this issue of paying up to our commitments.
But is that also a confirmation that you are taking that job at NATO?
I'm not commenting because I said something about it in October and I've decided to end it there. So,
but it will be in the next few months. I mean, and NATO's celebrating their 75th anniversary. It's a big year.
Yes, this is a big year for NATO because in the Washington summit is the 75-year summit where Jens Stoltenberg will preside as NATO Secretary General. No, I said something about my own future in October and I leave it there and I'm not going to add to what I said at that moment.
Although I would like to just sort of build on this idea that Trump has been front and center at this conference. What do you think people have wrong when they talk about some of their fears? Because we've heard this again and again, that a lot of people are very concerned about Trump 2.0, and you don't sound that concerned.
Well, of course, first of all, I cannot vote in the US. Secondly, I do not agree with everything Biden or Trump are doing. And I don't have to because I don't live in the US. But in the end, for me, from the Netherlands, we are, after the United Kingdom, the most transatlantic country in Europe. We are one of the biggest trading nations in the world. So that relationship with the US for us is crucial. And that means that whoever is president, being fairly elected in that country, we will work with. And it doesn't make sense to start commenting before the election is taking place. Oh, if this happens or that happens. moments. Well, then you should become a US citizen. Then you should try to get yourself on the ballot.
All right,
which is not possible if you're not born in the US.
Because you've checked. No, but I'm curious about, the reason why people are thinking about this now is because we're thinking about, okay, how stable is the landscape that Davos has come to celebrate in some ways, which is this globalization and this idea.
Here, the issue is this, that we are always talking about globalization, and we need globalization. We need a multilateral system. But also the strong nation state. And what I think in Davos for too many years we have done too much is celebrating the multilateral world order, forgetting about the necessity that you also need strong nation states. And you need the one and the other. It is not neither or, you need both at the same time. Because for example, my country, what is my task? Strong economy and making sure that the Netherlands is safe. To have a strong economy and make sure the Netherlands is safe, we need the EU, we need NATO, etc. But it's in the national interest of the Netherlands. So we need both. And sometimes this almost gathering of the world elite discussing multilateralism as something in its own right is not right. It has to be connected and grounded in the nation state. That's my belief.
Prime Minister, I know you've only got 90 seconds left with us, so I want to finish on this. You've been at the forefront, I think, of this conversation where others have been lacking in Europe, getting Europe to look at itself about what Europe needs to do. The European model, for many, including us sitting here, feels broken. To rely on America for defence, for China for economic growth, for Russia for energy. It feels like in the last 10 years we've seen a real setback, a reality check. As you step back from the Netherlands, from your current role as Prime Minister, what's the new growth model look like? What does the new model actually look like?
EU. The internal market is the biggest internal market in world history, as NATO is the strongest defense alliance in world history. So the EU is successful. Don't tell each other or try to convince each other that the EU is broken. It is not. Yes, there are many issues we have to solve. But take, for example, our dependency on Russian gas. We have been able in just 18 months basically to deleverage that dependency on Russia in terms of our gas supply. And in many other issues the same. And when it comes to our collective defense, we have stepped up in terms of defense spending. Most NATO countries also being member of the EU. We have now Finland in the EU. Sweden will join as soon as possible. So I'm not that pessimistic. No, I wouldn't buy that story.